Hare Krishna, dear devotees. This is Madhava Das from ISV, and this is online Wednesday class uh, on Srimad Bhagavatam Bhagavad Gita. Thank you. Thanks a lot for taking time from your busy schedule and joining this class online. I will be taking care of a little bit of logistical things, and then we will resume the class. Please bear with me. Okay, going back. So today's topic we are going to speak on is actually from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 13th chapter. It is basically the Hamsa avatar of Lord Krishna is clarifying a very important question for Brahma, demigods, and the four Kumaras. And it is also very applicable for those who are trying to, the sadhakas on the devotional path. So before we start the program, we will sing few prayers. First, I like to, not a very good singer, but I like to sing Jai Radha Madhava, which is very dear to our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. And then we'll follow it by praying Mangalacharan to Radha, Krishna, and all the dear devotees of theirs, the previous Acharyas, to invoke their blessings for the success of this discourse. And then we will come to the topic of today. जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपीजन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी जय यशोदानंदन जय ब्रज जनरंजन जय यशोदानंदन जय ब्रज जनरंजन जय यमुना तीरवनचारी जय यमुना तीरवनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So after Jai Radha Madhav, we will be singing the Mangalacharan prayers. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथानुगीतं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमस्तुते तप्त कांचना गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 रामो राम राम हरे हरे। So today's topic for discussion will be who are you? Um, this is a very interesting question that gets asked. The question is actually not that interesting, but the answers are very interesting. This question gets asked when um, the, the Sanak, the four Kumaras, I think Sanak Kumar is asking that if we all know that this material world, engagements in this material world ultimately leads to misery, then still why our mind get attracted to the material sense objects? And Lord Brahma being himself, he is very elevated. He is also a devotee of the Lord. But because he is engaged in the creative functions of the universe, he is not able to answer the question. And he then invokes the mercy of Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, to help him out. And then Lord Krishna comes as Hamsa. Hamsa is very symbolic here because a swan, what a swan does is it has a quality of able to extract the milk or the cream from a mixture of, milk and water. It can do that. It can take the cream out of it. And the, the question is very intelligent, which Sanaka asks. And that is why the swan avatar of Lord was needed, because he is going to now extract the cream from of the Vedic literature and going to deliver it to the demigods headed by Lord Brahma along with Sanaka and other rishis. And but when he appears, then the demigods headed by Brahma, they ask him, who are you? because suddenly someone appears, right? There's a conversation going on and suddenly someone appears. So it's a natural question, right? Who are you, right? And then, of course, the Hamsa Avtara, Lord Krishna's Hamsa Avtara's answers are very interesting. So we'll go through that chapter. Somewhere in between, we'll stop, because some of the purports are very interesting, very relevant. As devotees, we have to be very careful. So those topics, I'm going to, in those purports, I'm going to cover as well. So I'm going to now share my screen. So further, before I go into the before I go into this particular chapter, we have to understand a little bit of background of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srimad Bhagavatam by our Acharyas, they have described it as Amal Puran. Amal, means not, Mal means no contamination. So it's a Puran which is without any contamination. It was when Ved Vyas finished his Mahabharata. Okay? He finished all the Vedas, he finished all the Puranas, describing, compiling them. And finally, Mahabharata, which is essence of all the Vedic teachings, either in Vedas or in. He was not satisfied. And then also he did Brahma Sutra. He was still not satisfied. And so Narad Muni comes and understands. Narad Muni is the spiritual master of Vedya. And he comes and understands his dilemma or dissatisfaction with his work. And then he says, you have not glorified Lord Krishna enough. And you have in the other Puranas and Vedas, you have given instructions by which people will interpret them in a wrong way. They will think all these Vedic incantations or mantras are supposed to invoke demigods so that they can get objects for sense gratification. They will not understand that they have to take all this pain for this sense objects, which itself is ephemeral, will go away someday, right? Either in this material world or in the heavenly planets. They will not see that. They will miss the important purpose behind that, which is to get tired of those things and ultimately ask the question, so what is that thing which is eternal, can give me eternal happiness, eternal pleasure, eternal peace of mind? They will not see that. So you have to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead so that the people get attracted to them. So our acharyas have said that because of the presence of words Dhimahi, okay, in the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, as well as because it is Amal Puran, it is actually a commentary on Brahma Sutra, which is the essence. If you say, Upanishads are like the essence of all the Vedas, then Brahma Sutra is the essence of all the Upanishads. But it is so technical, so indirect, not very clear. You have to read all of Upanishads to really understand Brahma Sutra. Right? Ultimate goal of Brahma Sutra is Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Right? To go towards Brahman, which is one of the aspects of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. He exists as Brahman, he exists as Paramatma, he exists as all blissful Bhagavan. Then Vyas, instead of focusing on that all existence aspect, which is very analytical, very intellectual, instead focused on the blissful aspect. So that is why you see throughout the Bhagavatam, specifically in the 10th canto, the blissful aspect of Krishna in his pastime has been described elaborately. Right? So that's the background of Bhagavatam. And there it becomes very important to relish that blissful aspect of Krishna. It is very important to first understand who am I really? What is the relationship I have with Krishna? Because that is where it starts. If we are not able to come to that stage, then most of the pastimes will interpret them materially. And there are many commentaries out there on Bhagavatam also, very much materially motivated comment. Right? Even the impersonalists, they also, we have to be very careful reading the other interpretations of Bhagavatam, where even the impersonalists, they have interpreted Bhagavatam in their own way. So we have to first understand who are we, our position. We have to understand who is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, what's our relationship with them. And then comes the exchange of activities, serving Krishna and Krishna in turn reciprocating with us. And those things, the blissful pastimes comes later. So this particular chapter is that, like how, I don't know how many of you had been to India and saw railways, right? These railways, they come to these big cities, big metros, and there you have this junction where they come, they are there, and then they go somewhere else, right? So similarly, this particular chapter is that junction in which it is cutting off the relationship of the soul with the material energies of the Lord, so that the soul can clearly see its relationship with the Lord directly, and instead see these material energies also belong to Krishna, but they don't have much to do with the Jiva souls, individual souls. Okay. So given that background, let's jump into this chapter. I will straight jump into the portion, which is portion number, verse number 8. Because that is where the question is being asked by Uddhava. Sri Uddhava Uvacha Vidanti Matya Prayena Vishayan Padamapadam Tathapi Bhunjate Krishna Tat Katham Swatharajavat. Uddhava said, my dear Krishna, generally human beings know that material life brings great future and happiness, and still they try to enjoy material life. My dear Lord, how can one in knowledge act just like a dog, an ass, or a goat? So this conversation between Hansa Avatar and Sanaka and Brahma happens within the conversation between Lord Krishna and Uddhava. Before Lord Krishna is departing from the world, Uddhava gets it, and then Uddhava approaches humbly to Lord Krishna and says, what am I to do? And then Lord Krishna says, you still remain here in this world, in certain way, and he gives him instructions how to live in this world. Go to Badrikashram and give the instructions what I'm giving you with the sages there. In that whole conversation is this conversation happening. Okay? And Uddhava is asking Krishna, and then we will see how that conversation between Brahma and the demigods and the Hamsa Avatar comes into play. So, my dear Lord, how can one in knowledge act just like a dog, an ass, or a goat? Okay. Purport is very interesting by Srila Prabhupada. This purport is, by the way, purport is not actually by Srila Prabhupada. Purport is by his dear disciples, very close to him. Srila Prabhupada. By the time this purport were written, Srila Prabhupada had left the world. So his dear disciples, actually, most of the purports, they got directly from either Srila Prabhupada's conversations or from Krishna book or for other places where Prabhupada had written about this particular, about these various things described in the 11th canto. The standard methods of enjoyment in the material world are sex, money, and false prestige, all of which are obtained with great suffering and eventually lost. This is the interesting thing. You may get them if you have good karma from the past life. Okay, you may get them, but still you will lose them. One engaged in material life suffers in the present and has only a very bleak future to look forward to in the continuing cycle of birth and death. So much anxiety. I don't know what I'm going to become in next life. Thus, how can human beings who have seen these things and know them very well continue to enjoy life like dogs, asses, and goats, as if there is no tomorrow? Let's enjoy today. Often a dog will approach a bitch for sex, but the lady dog may not be attracted and will show her teeth, snarl, and threaten the poor dog with serious injury. Still, he goes about his business trying to get a little sex pleasure. Similarly, many times a dog risks being bitten or shot while stealing some food in a place where he knows he should not go. The ass is very attracted to the sea ass, but the lady ass often kicks him in the legs. Similarly, the ass's master gives the ass a handful of grass, which the poor ass could get anywhere, and then burdens him with great load. Okay, so similar thing in purport about goat is written. So the question is, in this way, even at the risk of being shot, bitten, and slaughtered, animals persist in their foolish sense gratification. How can an educated human being commit himself to such a condemned way of life, wherein the result is practically the same as that of animals? If by cultivating the mode of goodness, one's life is filled with happiness, enlightenment, and future rewards, why would anyone cultivate the modes of passion and ignorance? This is Madhava's question. Lord Krishna answered. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Aham iti anyatha buddhi pramatasya yatha hridhi utsarpati rajo ghoram tato vaikarikam mana rajo yuktasya manasa sankalpa sa vikalpaka tatah kamo guna dhyana dusaha shadhi dunate. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Uddhava, a person bereft of intelligence first falsely identifies himself with the material body and mind. And when such false knowledge arises within one's consciousness, material passion, the cause of great suffering, pervades the mind, which by nature is situated in goodness. Then the mind, contaminated by passion, becomes absorbed in making and changing many plans for material advancement. Thus, by constantly thinking of the modes of material nature, a foolish person is afflicted with unbearable material desires. So, how it all starts, Lord Krishna is saying, the first thing is, I am this body. This is my mind. This is my intelligence. All that thing which actually does not belong to the spirit soul starts thinking that they are mine. And when that false knowledge happens, then whatever happens in that mind also becomes the starts thinking, not becomes, she starts thinking that those things, those objects which came out of the mind, the thoughts are also mine. And thus gets into material passion. And when he's in passion, when those objects come, then he starts planning how to get them. Right? Because those are objects of desire. So this purport here we can read. A materialistic person is always thinking, oh, what a beautiful house. I wish we could buy it. Or what a beautiful woman. I wish I could touch her. Or what a powerful position. I wish I could occupy it, and so on. The words sankalpa, savikalpa, vikalpaka, indicate that a materialist is always making new plans or modifying his old plan to increase his material enjoyment. He's always doing that. When a person gets carried by material mode of passion, he's always making plans. But when he is peacefully in his saner moments, okay, he admits that material life is full of suffering. Why? because he has not achieved those things yet. He's still making plans. There is anxiety. And after getting also, by the example of those who have it, he knows that they are not very happy because they still want even more. That means there is suffering. Just by observation of the material world, he says, in the process of achieving those is suffering. After achieving, also there is suffering. The mind is created from the mode of goodness, as described in Sankhya philosophy. And the natural peaceful situation of mind is pure love of Krishna, in which there is no mental disturbance, disappointment, or confusion. Artificially, the mind is dragged down to a lower platform in passion or ignorance, and thus one is never satisfied. To recap again, how it is dragged down? By thinking that this is my body, this is my mind, this is my intelligence. When the soul starts thinking like that, that is where the starting point of his misery. Karoti kama vashaga karmani avichititendriya dukhodakami sampashyan rajuvega vimohita. One who does not control the material senses come under the control of material desires and is thus bewildered by the strong waves of the mode of passion. Such a person executes material activities, although clearly seeing that the result will be future unhappiness. So how it starts? It actually starts from the uncontrolled material senses. The uncontrolled material senses leads to being controlled by the material desire. Although he knows that all these things will ultimately lead to unhappiness. Why? Because I can see others. I am not in that stage like others who are more successful, so-called successful as per the material standards, and they are not happy. If they were happy, why would they want more? They are not happy. I can see that. So I will also not be happy. A sane person will think, what makes me so special? Rajastamobhyam yad api vidwan vikshipta dhipuna atandrito manu yunjan dosha drishti na sajjate. Although the intelligence of a learned person may be bewildered by the modes of passion and ignorance, he should again carefully bring the mind under control. By clearly seeing the contamination of the modes of nature, he does not become attached. Lord Krishna, what he's saying here, actually needs great spiritual strength to see it that way, the way Lord Krishna is saying. Because if you remember, the third chapter towards the end in Bhagavad Gita, right? When Arjuna is asking, what is that thing, even though I know something is wrong, what is that thing which is compelling me to do it? And Lord Krishna says it is lust. And this lust is there sitting on the senses, it is sitting on the mind, it is sitting on the intelligence. All the strategic places it has occupied. So because the lust is there in intelligence also, it is not letting the intelligence function the way it should function, the way its creator, that is the Lord Krishna, intended it to function. It is not able to function. It is the lust. Right? But Lord Krishna also says in the beginning of 4th chapter that he gave that knowledge of yoga, that knowledge by which one can get that spiritual intelligence, right? The discussion or absorption in his transcendental pastimes. He actually, 4th chapter down the line in one of the verses says, right? That is how the intelligence will get purified. Now the soul, using the purified intelligence, will be able to see how passion and ignorance is trying to control him. And he will try to bring himself away from those situations which puts a soul into the modes of passion and ignorance. By clearly seeing the contamination of the modes of nature, it does not become attached. He is able to see clearly. For this, the Lord Krishna here, when he talks about intelligence, he is talking about an intelligence which is purified. And that is why he's saying of a learned person. Okay? He is talking about a person who is absorbed in Lord Krishna's pastimes, so his intelligence is purified enough to see the the um, the failure to be in the modes of passion and ignorance, and he keeps himself away. Apramato anuyunjita manomai arpayati chane ani vinno yatha kalam jita swaso jitasana. A person should be attentive and grave, never lazy or morose. The people who are lazy or morose will find lazy or morose means even thinking that, you know, even though my consciousness is purified enough, if I start thinking Krishna will take care of me, okay, I don't have to worry. If that is okay, when your consciousness is completely purified. If it is not, if you have that kind of attitude, that is an attitude of being a lazy or morose. As long as one's consciousness is not completely purified, one must be attentive and one must be serious. Great. Mastering the yoga procedures of breathing and sitting properly, one should practice fixing the mind on me at dawn, noon, and sunset. And thus, gradually, the mind should be completely absorbed in me. So when Lord Krishna is saying completely absorbed in me, it not just means on him, in his form, but it can be absorbed in his pastimes, his lila, his names, starting with his name, holy names. So that is how one should be until one has come to the stage of pure consciousness or pure intelligence. Etavan yoga adisto machishya shanakadidhi sarvato man akrishya mai adha vishyate yatha. The actual yoga system as taught by my devotees, headed by Sanat Kumar, is simply this. Having withdrawn the mind from all other objects, one should directly and appropriately absorb it in me. Lord Krishna is summarizing exactly what is intending to say has been said by one of his devotees and disciples, Sanat Kumar. The word yatha accordingly properly indicates that like Uddhava, one should hear directly from Lord Krishna or his bona fide representative and directly, or Adha, fix the mind in Lord Krishna. One should avoid speculations in the mind. One should directly focus on the holy names of Krishna and should not artificially trying to bring form of Krishna or pastimes of Krishna. Just focus on the names of Krishna. When it is purified enough, it will automatically bring the pure pastimes of Krishna, pure forms of Krishna. Sri Uddhava Uvacha Yada Tvam Sanakadibhyo Yena Rupena Keshava Yogam Adistavan Rupamichami Veditum. Sri Uddhava said, my dear Kesava, at what time and in what form did you instruct the science of yoga to Sanaka and his brothers? I now desire to know about these things. So naturally, you will see the devotees, whenever they hear something devotional or something, a discourse going on between the devotee and the Lord, they always want to hear it more. Okay? Because they are never satiated by hearing about the pastimes of Krishna with his devotee. They always want to hear more and more. So that is what Uddhava expressed here. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Putra Hiranya Garbhasya Manasasana Kadaya Paprachupitaram Shukshmam Yogaksha Kantikim Gatim. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, once the mental sons of Lord Brahma, mental sons means Manasa Putri, they came out of Lord Brahma's mind. Namely, the sages headed by Sanaka. There were four Kumaras. And the eldest one was Sanaka. Inquired from their father about the difficult subject matter of the supreme goal of yoga. Sanakadaya uchu guneshva avishate cheto gunaschetasi cha prabho katham anyonya shantyago mumukshor ati tirshusho ati titirsho. Translation. The sages headed by Sanaka said, O Lord, people's minds are naturally attracted to material sense objects. And similarly, the sense objects in the form of desire enter within the mind. Therefore, how can a person who desires liberation, who desires to cross over activities of sense gratification, destroy this mutual relationship between the sense objects and the mind? Please explain this to me. Very interesting question. Here, there is a hidden assumption in this question. And the hidden assumption is, the person is thinking that this mind, this intelligence, this body, and me, there is no difference. That whole thing is me. And then there are sense objects outside, which my mind is getting attracted to. But I have seen suffering because of that, either in the endeavor to get those objects or after getting those objects, of losing those, fear of losing those objects. So if I want to be liberated from these thoughts, from these pains, then what should I do, basically? How can I cut off my mind from those sense objects? So inherent in this question is the mind belongs to me. And so I have to therefore cut off my mind from the objects. And as we go on, we'll see that there is a problem with that argument. As described above, as long as one is conditioned soul, the modes of material nature manifested in the form of sense object constantly disturb the mind, and by their harassment, one is deprived of the actual perfection of life. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Evam Prishto Mahadeva Swayambhur Bhavana Dhyaya Mana Prashna Bijam Nabhyapadyata Karmadhi. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Uddhava, Brahma himself, who is born directly from the body of the Lord and who is the creator of all living entities within the material world, being the best of the demigods, seriously contemplated the question of his sons headed by Sanaka. The intelligence of Brahma, however, was affected by his own activities of creation, and thus he could not discover the essential answer to this question. The act of creation is actually in the mode of passion. Act of maintenance is in the mode of goodness. Act of destruction is in the mode of ignorance. So because Lord Brahma is engaged in the act of creation, that's in the mode of passion. In the mode of passion, very much my mind, my body, my ideas, these things are very prevalent. And so Lord Brahma himself was unable to fathom the essential answer to this question, which four Kumaras asked. This purport is very, very important. Srila Jiva Goswami has quoted 3 verses from the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam as follows. In the 9th chapter, verse 32, Lord Krishna blessed Brahma with realized knowledge of the Lord's actual form, qualities, and activity. In the 9th chapter, verse 37, The Lord ordered Brahma to rigidly carry out the Lord's injunctions and affirmed that Brahma would thus never be bewildered in his cosmic decision making. In the sixth chapter, verse 34, Lord Brahma assured his son Narada, O Narada, because I have caught hold of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari, with great zeal, whatever I say has never proved to have been false, nor is the progress of my mind ever deterred, nor are my senses ever degraded by temporary attachment to matter. In the first paragraph, Srila Jiva Goswami is laying the background that Lord Brahma's elevated position, that is always has the mercy of Lord Krishna. He can never become bewildered. But in this second paragraph, in this present verse, in this 13th chapter, 11th canto, Lord Krishna states that Brahma unfortunately did become bewildered by his creative function, thus providing a grave lesson to all of the Lord's empowered representatives. Although one may be elevated to an exalted position in the Lord's transcendental service, at any moment there is danger of false pride polluting one's devotional mentality. So one has to be very, very careful. That's why it is very important that we surround ourselves with devotees who are not just praising us, but correcting us. Very important that we surround ourselves with devotees who are correcting us, because they are our real friends. Specifically, when they see that, pride is kind of, coming into my heart. Right? So that's why this purport is very important for the devotees. Let me quickly check if I continue. There is any comment, any question in the online. Please bear with me. No questions anywhere. So then I will go back again. And online here in Zoom also, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to unmute and started. Okay. 90. Samam achintaya deva prashnaparatitishaya tasyaham hamsarupena takasham agamam tada. Lord Brahma desired to attain the answer to the question that was puzzling him. Thus, he fixed his mind on me, the Supreme Lord. At that time, in my form of Hamsa, I became visible to Lord Brahma. This attitude is very important. Simply because I have come to a position, very exalted position, not that I am completely unconquerable. There will be situations that will come in my life where I will fail. And that time, we should not hesitate in our heart to get help from Lord Krishna. We should ask his guidance. And if some guidance comes up, we are not very clear, then we can always go to a spiritual master or senior devotees who are our well-wishers, and go to them and clarify the doubt. Okay. At that time, in my form of Hamsa, I became visible to Lord Brahma. So here, this purport, they are saying Hamsa means swan, and the specific ability of the swan is to separate a mixture of milk and water, extracting the rich, milky portion. Similarly, Lord Krishna appeared as Hamsa, or the swan, in order to separate the pure consciousness of Lord Brahma from the modes of material nature, so that Lord Brahma is able to see clearly. And he's not only going to come in swan, but the instructions he gives are similarly applicable in this current situation. दृष्ट्वा मां त उपव्रजया कृत्वा पादाभिवन्दनम् ब्रह्माणम् अग्रतः कृत्वा पप्रच्छुको भवानिति. Thus, seeing me, the sages, placing Brahma in the lead, came forward and worshipped my lotus feet. Then they frankly asked me, "Who are you?" So that's the title of a question. Sorry, title, the subject, the topic of our discussion today. Who are you? So suddenly he came, the Hansa avatar suddenly came because the demigods headed by Sanaka asked question to Brahma. Brahma is contemplating. Just imagine the situation. And suddenly this Hamsa avatar appears. So the sages, and he did not say anything yet. He just appeared. And so the sages asked him, "Who are you?" Okay. They worshipped his lotus feet because he seemed very effulgent. Okay. So they thought he definitely must be a very exalted personality. Okay. So let's first worship. And then we can also ask him, who is he? Because we don't recognize him, looks like. Iti aham munibhi prishtas tattvajiggyashubhistada yad avocham aham tebhyas tat udhava nibodhame. My dear Udhava, the sages, being eager to understand the ultimate truth of the yoga system, thus inquired from me. Now please hear as I explain that which I spoke unto the sages. It is Lord Krishna himself who came there as Hamsa, right? So he's saying that now listen what I explained. When they asked me that question, what did I say in return? Vastu no yadi annanatva atmana prashna idrisha katham ghateta vo vipra vaktu vameka ashraya. My dear Brahmanas, if when asking me who I am, you believe that I am also a Jiva soul, and that there is no ultimate difference between us, means between the Hamsa and the demigod and the other rishis, since all souls are ultimately one without individuality, then how is your question possible or appropriate? Ultimately, what is the real situation or resting place, both of yourselves and of me? So it is important to read this purport because there is a slight indication that the Hamsa is another soul and the demigods, Brahma, they are other souls. So this purport clarifies that. Asraya means the resting place or shelter. Lord Krishna's question, what is our actual resting place or shelter? So instead of asking, who are you? You should have asked, what is our actual resting place or shelter? Means, what is our ultimate nature or constitutional position? That is more appropriate question. This is because no one can come to rest or be satisfied unless one is in one's natural position. The example is given that one may travel all over the world, but ultimately one becomes satisfied by returning to one's own home. Similarly, a crying child is satisfied when embraced by its own mother. By inquiring about the shelter or resting place of himself and the Brahmanas, the Lord is indicating the eternal constitutional position of every living entity. If Lord Krishna were also in the Jiva category, and if all living entities, including him, were thus equal, there would be no deep purpose in one living entity inquiring, another answering. Only one who is in a superior position can meaningfully answer important questions. It may be argued that the bona fide spiritual master answers all the questions of the disciple, and yet the guru is in the Jiva category. The answer is that bona fide spiritual master speaks not on his own behalf, but as a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is in the Vishnu category. A so-called guru speaking on his own behalf as a Jiva soul is useless and is unable to meaningfully answer serious questions. So he is talking about so-called guru, not bona fide guru, not the guru who accepts Krishna as God. That kind of guru, if you go and try to ask, who are you, will probably not get a very good answer from him. It may not help you in your spiritual life. Thus, the sage's question, O Bhavan, who are you, indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally an individual person. And because the sages headed by Lord Brahma offered obeisances and worshipped the Lord, it is understood that he is Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Brahma, as the first created being in this universe, could not accept any other living entity except the Lord as worshipable. Right? So they accepted him as Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they still wanted to clarify who is he. Lord Krishna's actual purpose is to explain the ultimate perfection of yoga, which the sages were desiring to know. If one becomes fixed in transcendental knowledge, the mutual attraction between the material mind and material sense object automatically ceases. So, the attraction between mind and object ceases if one has transcendental knowledge. What is that knowledge? So, we'll go over that. Okay, let's go. Panchaatmakeshu bhuteshu shamaneshu cha vastuta O bhavan iti va prashno vacharambo hi anarthaka. If by asking me who are you are referring to the material body, because that's what in the contemporary material world, if someone asks me, I'm going to immigration and say, who are you? Then I will say, I'm Abhijit Banerjee, it's there in the passport. But that's a name for my body, for my mind, for my intelligence. That's not the name of my soul. Okay. But here, Hamsa Avatar is saying that if you mean who are you as material body, then he's saying, then I must point out that all material bodies are constituted of 5 elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Thus, you should have asked, who are you 5? So Lord Krishna, by responding to that question, is trying to ask them, instead of going into the sense objects of this world, the body and all these things, which all have some names, instead of focusing on that, focus on the essential aspect of that, the soul and the elements, focus on the essential aspect. If you consider that all material bodies are ultimately one, being constituted essentially of the same elements, then your question is still meaningless, since there would be no deep purpose in distinguishing one body from another, because all bodies are made of 5 elements. So what is the meaning of asking, who are you? Thus, it appears that in asking my identity, you are merely speaking words without any real meaning or purpose. Manasha vachasa drishtya griyate anyarapindriyay aham eva namatto anyat iti buddhyadhvam anjasha. Within this world, whatever is perceived by mind, speech, eyes, or other senses is me alone, nothing besides me. All of you, please understand this by a straightforward analysis of fact. So this is a typical flow in most of the Vedic scriptures. There is a question, answer, there is a direct answer to this question, and then analysis follows. There is a question, the facts are given first, and then conclusion comes. Okay. So there is a pattern. You will see that in Bhagavad Gita, you will also see here. So here in this case, Krishna is directly first answering the question, and then he's saying, let's analyze whatever I say. Okay. So within this world, he's saying that whatever you are perceiving with your senses is me alone and nothing besides me. And that's fact. Because if we consider we are all souls, then we are part and parcel of Krishna, the Supreme Soul. And if we consider ourselves as body, then that's all Krishna's separated energies, right? So that is also Krishna. So indirectly, everything is Krishna. Okay, but then Krishna will analyze that to fact. Guneshwa avi sate cheto gunas chetasi cha praja jivasya deha ubhayam gunas chetumad atmana. My dear sons, the mind has a natural proclivity to enter into the material sense of. So, what Lord Krishna is saying, you cannot cut off your mind from the sense object. It's his natural tendency to get attracted to sense objects. And similarly, the sense objects will enter into the mind. But both the material mind and sense objects are merely designations that cover the spirit soul. This is the supreme knowledge. Material mind and sense objects do not belong to the soul. Soul identifies with them, but they don't belong. They are just a covering of the soul. Soul belong to me. Me means here, Supreme Personality of God. That's the relationship soul. Let's read this particular paragraph. Sridhar Swami's commentary on this verse. Sridhar Swami points out that the symptom of the material mind is the tendency to consider oneself to be the ultimate doer and enjoyer. Naturally, one with such a puffed up mentality is helplessly attracted by the sense object. One who considers himself to be the doer and enjoyer will be irresistibly attracted to the means of attaining sense gratification and false prestige, namely exploitation of material objects. Above the material mind, however, is intelligence, which can perceive the existence of the eternal spirit soul. It is not possible to separate the material mind from sense objects because they naturally exist together. Therefore, by intelligence, one must realize one's eternal form as spirit soul, part and parcel of the Lord. Again, what Sridhar Swami is saying as the intelligence here, he is talking about the spiritual intelligence, the purified intelligence. This is not the intelligence contaminated by lust, which is mentioned in the end of the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna is talking about how lust compels the living entity. Okay. And completely reject the bogus material mentality. One who revives his original spiritual mentality becomes automatically detached from material attraction. Therefore, one should cultivate knowledge of the falsity of sense gratification. When the mind or senses are attracted to material enjoyment, the superior intelligence, that is that spiritual intelligence, must immediately detect such illusion. So this is very important. One has to be, it's like, when you play table tennis, I don't know whether you played, it all depends how fast you react, right? Of course, you need to have skills, but how fast you react when the opponent is hitting the ball is very important, right? You cannot be a laggard and play table tennis, right? So here also it is very important. You have to immediately act. The moment it is entering, you have to recognize, oh, my consciousness is getting contaminated by enjoyment. In this way, one should purify one's mentality. By devotional service to the Lord, such detachment and intelligence automatically awaken. Now, there is an easier way, Sridhar Swami is saying, which is do devotional service to the Lord. You do devotional service to the Lord, but we devotees, the mixed, at least myself, the conditioned devotees, we have day jobs and we go and mix with all kinds of materialistic people, materialistic environment. So we'll have to do both. We'll have to do devotional service, which can automatically awaken this detachment and intelligence. But then we have to be also use the other thing which Sridhar Swami says. The moment a material enjoyment is coming to the mind, we must be able to detect that it is an illusion. We may have to do it, engage in that, depending on what is your office situation or work situation. But we have to always keep in our mind that this is illusion. Okay. Guneshu chavisachittam abhikshnam guna sevaya gunascha chitta prabhava madrupa ubhayam tyajet. A person who has thus achieved me by understanding that he is not different from me realizes that the material mind is lost within the sense objects because of constant sense gratification, and that the material objects are existing prominently within the material mind. Having understood my transcendental nature, he gives up both the material mind and object. So now Lord Krishna is clarifying. The mind does not belong to you. Mind also belongs to Krishna. The objects also belongs to Krishna. It is because of your illusion you think that mind belongs to you. And therefore, that natural tendency of the mind to connect to the objects, you are not able to sever that tie. you are working on the wrong thing. Instead of disassociating your mind from the objects, instead focus on disassociating your mind itself. Focus on the fact that the mind does not belong to you. Mind belongs to you. Mind belongs to Krishna. Therefore, it should be used always for Krishna's service. Jagrat swapna shushuptam cha gunato buddhi vitraya vrittaya tasam vilakshano jiva chakshitena vinishchita. Waking, sleeping, and deep sleep are the three functions of the intelligence and are caused by the modes of natural nature. The living entity within the body is ascertained to possess characteristics different from these three states and thus remains as a witness to them. He is now talking about how intelligence works. Okay? So the waking. So all of us normally go through these three stages of consciousness. So we either are awake, right? We are looking at the sense, the sense objects. When we are sleeping, he is actually talking about dream sleep, the sleep which has dreams. When mind is engaged with the object, may not be the body, and deep sleep, where we are completely in mode of ignorance. Okay? We are not aware of our mind or body. But all these are caused by the modes of material nature. The living entity within the body is ascendant. The living entity is separate from that. He belongs to the fourth category of Turiya, transcendental consciousness. Okay? Yeah. So the spirit soul actually, purport, the spirit soul actually has nothing to do with material world, having no permanent or natural relationship with it. Real renunciation means to give up the illusory identification with matter in its subtle and gross form, susuptam, or deep sleep indicates sleeping without any dreams or conscious activity. These three states are described by Lord Krishna as follows. Tattvaj jagaram vidyat rajasha swapnamadise praswapam tamasajantos turiyam trishu shantatam. One should know that the wakefulness is born of the mode of goodness, dreams from the mode of passion, and deep dreamless sleep from the mode of ignorance. The fourth element, pure consciousness, is different from these three and pervades them. So, real freedom means Takshit cannot to exist as a witness to the functions of illusion. Such an advantageous position is achieved by development of Krishna consciousness. So as you become more and more Krishna conscious by performing devotional service, more and more you will be able to come to this stage where you will be able to witness, instead of identifying with the thoughts, thinking that these thoughts are mine, you'll be able to witness that this thought came to the mind. This thought came to the mind, not my mind, the mind. So you'll be able to separate yourself. You won't get attached to those thoughts. Yarhi samsriti bandho ayam atmano guna vritida manturye sthito jayat tyagastad guna chetasam. The spirit soul is trapped in the bondage of material intelligence, which awards him constant engagement in the illusory modes of nature. But I am the fourth stage. Now, what is that fourth stage of consciousness beyond wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep? That is Krishna himself. Becoming situated in me, the soul should give up the bondage of material consciousness. So because Lord Krishna is in the fourth stage of consciousness, so the spirit soul, which is part and parcel of Krishna, is also actually in the fourth stage of consciousness. But this fourth stage of consciousness also pervades the other three stages, which is wakefulness, sleep with the dream, Sushupti, and the deep sleep. The dreaming and the deep sleep. Right? It pervades that also. That is why the soul is aware about those also when the soul's consciousness is contaminated by the modes of nature. At that time, the living entity will automatically renounce the material sense objects and the material mind. So what we are doing through devotional service is nothing but we are coming closer and closer to Krishna in that fourth state of consciousness, where we tend to become witness of the activities of the mind and the body and all those things. It's not that our body doesn't function. We do whatever we have to do, our duties, but we are more of a witness to that. The soul is a witness to that. That is why soul can remain detached from the results of such activity. Ahankara kritam bandham atmano artha viparyayam vidwan nirvidya samsara chintam turye sthitas tyajet. The false ego of the living entity places him in bondage and awards him exactly the opposite of what he really desires. Therefore, an intelligent person should give up his constant anxiety to enjoy material life and remain situated in the Lord, which is beyond the functions of material consciousness. The false ego keeps on the ahankar, that I am the doer, I am the enjoyer. That attitude always keeps giving him whatever he desires, he gets exactly opposite. Right? For example, we may when we imagine a very beautiful house, we imagine ourselves, kind of enjoying that house. And we are at peace. We'll be very peaceful because we have achieved everything. We have so many rooms, all those kinds of things, right? But when we get the house, we have to realize that, oh, there are so many maintenance for this house. So what we desired peace and happiness. And we get exactly opposite, anxiety and unhappiness when we have that house. Right? So that is what ahankar does. Yavannanartha dhipumso nani vartita yuktibhi jagarti api swaparnagya swapna jagaranam yatha. According to my instructions, one should fix the mind on me alone, just on Krishna. If, however, one continues to see many different values and goals in life rather than seeing everything within me, then although apparently awake, one is actually dreaming due to incomplete knowledge. Just as one may dream that one is awakened from a dream. So what Lord Krishna is trying to say, that when awake, if you don't fix your mind on me alone and see, when Lord Krishna is saying me alone, he doesn't mean that you close your eyes and don't see anything else. No. Me alone means everything else in this world also is Krishna's part and parcel or his energies. So don't make plans. Krishna is the supreme intelligence. He already has planned. He is not going to randomly scatter things around and go figure. No, Krishna is not like that. He has supreme intelligence. He is planned for everything. He has planned for every atom. So one should just focus on Krishna. Everything else also is part of Krishna. So one should be, instead of making plans how to be better, how to enjoy better, instead of planning for that, focus on Krishna. Okay? Focus on the Krishna and his energies. That all the energies also belong to Krishna, not focus on Krishna's energies independently, but they belong to Krishna and therefore must be used for Krishna. Asatvadatmano anyasham bhavanam tatveda bheda gatayo hetavaschasya nisha swapna disho yatha. These states of existence that are conceived of as separate from the Supreme Personality of Godhead have no actual existence, although they create a sense of separation from the Absolute Truth. This state of existence means it's talking about the wakefulness, dream, and deep sleep. Just as the seer of a dream imagines many different activities and rewards, similarly, because of the sense of an existence separate from the Lord's existence, the living entity falsely performs fruitive activities, thinking them to be the cause of future rewards and destination. यो जागरे बहिरनुक्षणा धर्मिणो अर्थान् भुक्ते समस्तकारणे हृदि तत्सदृक्षान् स्वप्नेषु सुप्ता उपसंहरते एका स्मृति अन्वयात् त्रिगुणवृत्तिदृक्. Translation: while awake, the living entity enjoys with all of his senses the fleeting characteristics of the material body and mind. While dreaming, he enjoys similar experiences within mind, and in deep dreamless sleep, all such experiences merge into ignorance. By remembering and contemplating the succession of wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep, the living entity can understand that he is one throughout the three stages of consciousness and is transcendental. Thus, he becomes the Lord of the senses. So, so in the beginning, Lord Krishna was saying one has to control the senses with his intelligence. But one only when someone has achieved this level of intelligence that one's own consciousness, the soul's consciousness is transcendental to these three different consciousness, is situated in the states, then that intelligence can only help him become Lord of the senses, or you can call Goswami. Right? He can help. This knowledge can, this realization, not just knowledge, this realization can help one to become the Lord of the senses. एवं निमृश्य गुणतो मनसस्त्रियावस्था मन्माययामयीकृता इति निश्चितः शांचिद्यहार्दम् अनुमानशतुक्तितीक्ष्णा ज्ञानशीना भजतमखिला संशयाधीन. Translation: you should consider how, by the influence of my illusory energy, these three states of the mind caused by the modes of nature have been artificially imagined to exist in me. Having definitely ascertained the truth of the soul, you should utilize the sharpened sword of knowledge acquired by logical reflection from the instructions of the sages and Vedic literatures to completely cut off the false ego, because false ego is the source of misery, which is the breeding ground of all doubt. It actually creates doubt. And then intelligence comes in the mode of passion and forces the living entity to make all kinds of plans. The false ego actually creates doubt. All of you should then worship me who am situated within the heart. So one has to, with this knowledge, that these three states of mind are actually caused by the modes of nature, as we saw, the wakeful in the mode of goodness, dream in the mode of passion, deep sleep in the mode of ignorance. They are all caused by the modes of nature through intelligence. Intelligence does that. Once you know that, then with that knowledge, you cut off your mind. And then you completely cut off your material mind and cut off the false ego, and then completely focus on Lord Krishna within the heart, who is the fourth stage of consciousness, the purified consciousness. Ikshita vibramam idam manasho vilasham drishtam vinastam atitolam malata chakram vijnanamekam murudheva vibhati maya swapnasthita guna visarga krito vikalpa. One should see that the material world is a distinct illusion appearing in the mind, because material objects have an extremely flickering existence and are here today and gone tomorrow. They can be compared to the streaking red line created by whirling a fiery stick. So if you have a stick with fire, right, which is fire, and you move that, then you see there is a red line which is moving, which is following the stick, but going from where it was. It vanishes there, right? If you move a stick from A to B, then A, that red line is not there. The source of this fire, this material world, the sense objects it creates are like that. They're flickering. The spirit soul by nature exists in the single state of pure consciousness. That's the fourth stage of consciousness, right? The Turiya. However, in this world, he appears in many different forms and stages of existence. The modes of nature divide the soul's consciousness into normal, wakefulness, dreaming, and dreamless state. All such varieties of perception, however, are actually Maya or illusion and exist only like a dream. दृष्टिं तथा प्रतिनिवर्त्यानिवृता तृष्णा तूष्णीं भवेन्निजा सुखानुभावनिर्था चन्द्रश्यते क्व च यदि तमवस्तु बुद्ध्या त्यक्तं भ्रमया न भवेत् स्मृतिरानिपाता. Having understood the temporary illusory nature of material things and thus having pulled one's vision away from illusion, one should remain without material desires. By experiencing the happiness of the soul, one should give up material seeking and activity. If sometimes one must observe the material world, one should remember that it is not the ultimate reality and therefore one has given it up. By such constant remembrance, up till the time of death, one will not again fall into illusion. So one must know that the material world is not the ultimate reality. It's a temporary reality, and one must should be able to disconnect oneself from it. Means not attached to it. And here Lord Krishna is saying, still a person has to survive, right? There's a body, there's a mind, it has to survive. So what to do? And here Lord Krishna is saying how to live in this world. Deham cha nashwaram avasthitam uttitam va siddho na pashyati yato adhyagamat sarupam Daivadapetam tadaiva Vasho yatha parikritam madhiramadanda. Just as a drunken man does not notice if he is wearing his coat or shirt, similarly, one who is perfect in self-realization and who has thus achieved his eternal identity does not notice whether the temporary body is sitting or standing. Indeed, if by God's will the body is finished, or if by God's will he obtains a new body, the self-realized soul does not notice, just as a drunken man does not notice the situation of his own birthplace. Lord Krishna is not asking the devotees to become drunk. What he's trying to say is that just like a drunken man does not notice what is going on, he sometimes moves around without his shirt or pant or here. He's not in his external consciousness. Similarly, the person who is self-realized also is not in consciousness of his body. Okay? That does not mean body is not acting, it is doing its duty. Okay, it is perceiving, how people are interacting with things. Based on that, it knows what is his duties, and he's just doing. He's in the present moment. He's just doing his duty. He's engaging. But he sees that body is engaged in its duties, depending on the body situation. It's a Brahmana, Kshatriya, man, woman, whatever. But he is detached from that. Okay. So this is a very high, very advanced stage. And that is what we say, the pure devotees are always intoxicated with the love of God. Does that mean their bodily functions don't go on? Does that mean they don't preach? They do all those things. But they know that their body is being used by the Lord and his energies. And he is just a witness to that. Whatever is the most appropriate for a particular situation, he does that. So in that sense, he's intoxicated by the love of God. His behavior is not like a normal person or a conditioned soul. He's a liberated soul. So it's already 8:31. So I am not going to proceed further. I think there are probably 5 more verses. But I don't have time. I think people they took time from their busy schedule, so I will just stop here. So just to summarize before we leave, what Lord Krishna has tried to say here through the Hamsa Avatar is saying that once we know our mind, our intelligence, our body also belongs to Krishna, and its mind's natural inclination, proclivity to get attracted to sense objects, because those sense objects are also created by Krishna, then we can become a witness. And how we can achieve that state? Here Lord Krishna is talking about the process of yoga, which These days we are reading the 8th chapter, attaining the Supreme, the same thing. But somewhere in the 8th chapter, Lord Krishna does say that someone who is dedicated with devotional service, always absorbed in Krishna, also attains the same state. So that is our path. In Krishna consciousness, that's the path we follow. We try to dedicate as much as the time we have possible to be absorbed in Krishna. That means either we are doing deity worship, or we are, engaged in the service in the temple, or we are having discussions with devotees, or we are doing some service, doing book distribution. We are engaged in some service to Lord Krishna and his devotees. With the main goal should be we should always Krishna in the back of the mind. Tam tasmat sarvesu kaleshu ma manusmara yuddhacha. That is what Lord Krishna says to Arjun in Bhagavad Gita. Tasmat sarvesu kaleshu. Always ma manusmara yuddhacha. Remember me and at the same time do your duty. So we have to be in that state, because the process of yoga, which is being, this is basically what we just know in Sankhya, but the philosophy still applies. The philosophy still applies that we have to absorb ourselves in Krishna. More and more we absorb ourselves in Krishna, what will happen is more and more we will reach the state of the drunken state, the intoxicated state, the state of love of God. And more we will see our body, our mind, they are just engaged with the modes of nature and the sense objects, and they are functioning accordingly. That is happening automatically by God's will. We are not going to use those for making plans for future sense gratification, which is actually the source of all the anxieties. So that is the sum and substance of this for the sadhakas. That is the sum and substance we can gather from this chapter. Now I will quickly check if there are any comments anywhere in the online.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. See, we know attachment and detachment, right? Many speak about that. And now with the examples that you shared, right? Can I say that we have to detach from a physical body, and we have to build out our spiritual body for that, where we will ultimately attach. Can we say like that? Like,
yes, but the thing is, when our nature is conditioned, when we are still in a conditioned state, if we take that leap suddenly, then we may get some tests from Krishna where we may not pass those tests because we are still conditioned. That is why it is said that we have to engage, we have to start by engaging in devotional service. What we are saying, I think that is Sunil Prabhu, I believe, what we are saying is it should happen automatically. So as we do devotional service, bhakti, more and more, bhakti is just, seva. Bhakti means seva to the Lord and seva to the Lord's devotees. As we do more and more, that state will automatically achieve. That state, the drunken state, the intoxication of love of God, the state of detachment, it will automatically come. And we won't even know when it happened. We will start getting disgusted with the material world. But we won't hate the material world because that is also Krishna's energy. Disgusted doesn't mean we hate, but we are disgusted by our own tendencies to enjoy. We'll get disgusted with that, the tendency to enjoy the material world. That we will get disgusted. But material world we cannot, because that's Lord's energy. So that will happen automatically. To answer your question, we should not make an effort, because if we make an effort, then we don't know really we are ready or not. That's the problem.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, that is a very advanced stage actually. What Lord Krishna, because remember, Lord Krishna is talking to whom as Hamsa Avatar here? He's talking to Uddhava, he's talking to Brahma, other demigods who control the universe. These people, they are very, very elevated, very advanced people, not people like me. I don't know about you, but not people like me, right? We are conditioned in earth. We worry all the time about insurance and retirement and all those things. That things keep coming in the mind, keep bothering us. That shows that we are not at that stage. So our stage is we have to keep doing devotional service, and Krishna is guaranteeing that a day will come when you will, that intoxication of love of Godhead will appear in your heart. And then the detachment will automatically follow.
Yes. So service is just a process.
Service, devotional service is the, yes, correct. That is the process.
Is the process to get. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu, for asking the question. Okay. I think we are well past the time. So
thank you. Thank you, Prabhuji. Bye.
Thank you. So we'll close the class now. And hope again we'll meet again next Wednesday, online class. So until then, please forgive me if I made any mistakes in delivery. Those are to me. And if anything you like from this class, then the credits goes to Srila Prabhupada, his dear disciples, and the previous authors. Till now, close the session. Vanchara Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyo Pranam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.